Okay, input output ports. A port, you know what is port? The input and output ports. So peripheral devices connected to the processor through this input output ports. So here example for input output ports: serial interface 8051, the SPI serial peripheral interface in 68HC11, and PPI parallel peripheral interface 8255, and ports P0, P1, P2, P3 in 8051, and PA, PB, PC, PD, that is 68HC11, then COM1 and COM2 ports in an IBM PC. So these are the things as input output ports. Example. So what are the types of input output ports? Synchronous serial input and synchronous serial output. Asynchronous serial UART, universal asynchronous, uh, means receiver transmitter. Asynchronous serial UART output both as input and as output. For example, modem. Input output ports types. Types of parallel ports. Parallel port 1 bit input, parallel port 1 bit output, then parallel port multi bit input and parallel port multi bit output. So these are the types. So now we are going to see what is synchronous serial input. So serial bits also send the clock pulse. Oh, what is synchronous? Asynchronous. Synchronous. It's a that a clock pulse are connected. The clock plays major role in synchronous circuit. For asynchronous, there is no clock. They used for sending and receiving data. So synchronous means it's a separation by a constant interval or phase difference. Example, if a clock period consider as t, then each byte at the port is received at input in period 80. So bytes are received at a constant rate. So data transfer rate of serial line bits is 1 by t. So this is serial synchronous serial input devices for port input. Here we have clock and then serial input, so that a bit are packed as a byte. That's a packet. But one packet has 8 bit. So that I represented as input. I0, that's the first bit. I0, I1, I2, I3 up to I7. So they mention state zeros and ones because here we are using digital. Serial input bit, byte wise, they packeted and sent to the device. That is serial input devices. With respect to clock signal, because of this clock signal, we can say this is synchronous input device. And synchronous serial output. So each bit in each byte sent in synchronization with the clock. Byte sent at constant rates If clock period T, then data transfer rate is 1 by T. So sender either send the clock pulse. You see that synchronous serial output devices. So devices serial bits and synchronous clock signal port out. So serial output port. So this one is synchronous serial output. So O, that is represented as output. So O0, O1, O2, O3 up to O7. So this packet bit coming from serial output port. So with respect to clock signal, then the output bit comes from the CPU or any other devices to peripheral devices. So the clock period it is T. So data transfer rate considered as 1 by T. Synchronous serial output using shift register. So here they are input and output. They use the shift register. So upload up and duplex full serial input output. That input and output at different time slabs. So even that a single line previously for input there is a one line, for output there is another line, and here serial input and output the shift register is both are in the same line. So that's the diagram shown. So here the data rate again 1 by T, same input output line. We can send the data and clock pulse is suitable to moderately input the serial input output ports. So see, just now I say again serial input and output I0 I7. It's a different time flat. So now we have to see asynchronous serial input receiver data. So I already said synchronous played by clock. Asynchronous means we having to use here clock. So clock signal we don't want to use here. So that means it does not receive the clock pulse or clock information along with the bits. So each bit received each byte at fixed interval, but each received byte is not synchronization. That is called as asynchronization. So bytes separated by variable interval or phase difference. Asynchronous serial input also called as VART. The serial input is according to the ART protocol. So asynchronous serial input RXT at VART COM port. See, we have chip select. So chip select it is used for it has the master and the slave. When it is slave mode, it will be enable read and write operation. When it is master mode, disable read and write operation. That is chip select. So here we have UART COM port. Uh, so there is no clock here. So asynchronous serial port does not depend upon the clock pulse along with the burst. That is we already know. So synchronous serial output we can also call the UART, universal asynchronous transmitter receiver output. So example for asynchronous output, the format of UART port the call. Okay, 1011 the time UART serial bytes, how they will be give the data frame format. The output from modem, the output for printer, the output for serial line. This is also called a port. So synchronous communication are 10 ways of transmitting synchronous serial bit. So what are the ways they have? Serial in, serial in, parallel in, serial out. So like that, FM frequency modulation, create contact amplitude modulation. So these are synchronous communication. See, this is very important. How the port might be. Serial port, male port, serial port, female port. Serial port considered as male, parallel port considered as a female port. So the real-time example shown in here. Serial ports and parallel ports. What's the difference between serial ports and parallel ports? That is, we have to see. Serial ports, that's the purpose of serial data transmission, and parallel ports is used to parallel data transmission. And transmission speed in serial port is little bit slow, and transmission speed the parallel port is high. And redundancy and number of wire. The wire communication of serial ports are quite less, and the parallel port wire communication of is high, quite high. Compactability. The serial port able to transmit a single stream of data, and parallel port able to transmit multiple data stream at the time. And data sending mechanism, the serial port sends bit sending bit by bit, and parallel port sending multiple bits in parallel fashion. So this is very important. The serial port sends the data bit by bit after sending at a time. Port type. Serial ports are used to mail ports. This one is used to female ports. Application are serial ports, modem, security camera devices, controller. And parallel ports they use to printer, hard device, CD device. Parallel. So parallel ports, output port, bidirectional port connection devices, how it will be connected. That is shown in the diagram. They are having keyboard, LCD display, modem, messenger, touch screen, how it will be connected with the ports. Then handshaking signal when used for input output ports. Okay, thank you.